love me so much more than I could ever know. Your love is deeper than this world will ever show. And all of life's beauty shines around this moment now. The sky and the cliffs, they seem to change my life somehow. And I will never be the same. Will never be the same. Whoa, 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 I will never be the same. Never be the same ever again. Well, here I am waiting, Lord, my life is just for you. Please unfold all the plans that you would have me do. And if all the world's just a breath and nothing's here to stay, then all of the love we feel will save us anyway. And I will never be the same. Will never be the same. Whoa, I will never be the same. Will never be the same ever again.
God's will is simple. The most wretched man in hell will not be Adolf Hitler. The most wretched man in hell, or woman, will not be one like Joe Stalin or some of these more modern devils. The most wretched person in hell will be a former Seventh-day Adventist.
Hello and welcome to another SDAQ&A. I am your host, Peter Dixon. And for those of you who are wondering what on earth is going on, why is he coming on at this time? I think it's around 7 maybe in the morning in the US of A, Pacific time. It's about 9 p.m. here, New South Wales, Australia. I had the pleasure today of playing this episode, Des Ford, Glacier View, Season 2, number 42 with Doug Hackleman. And halfway through, about an hour and a half, 2 hours in, just crashed. And so I uploaded that part again later. And so this is part 2. We're dividing the one show into 2 parts. And I tell you what, something happened because I watched the first half twice. It really hit me what a fantastic interview this is. Not me, but Doug Hackleman. What an absolutely incredible interviewee he is. Wow. I watched it twice back to back, the first couple of hours twice, and I learned so much. So I really want to encourage you guys to go back if you didn't see it and see part 1. It should be there processing away on YouTube right now. Same on Facebook and all the other platforms now, Twitter, X, Twitch, Discord, Rumble, 2 channels on YouTube. We're just everywhere right now, everywhere. Anyway, I encourage you to go and watch the first part and to watch today's part. I don't know how long it is. And I hope, I'm crossing fingers that the problem isn't at this point, because it did it again when I ran it through the second time and crashed. So I'm really hoping that somehow all the gremlins from the interweb have disappeared, that we've got a better signal, something, I don't know. But I really hope part 2 of this sees the light of day, because it is just fantastic. So bear with me as we cross fingers and toes and try very hard to play the last part of today's program. Number 42 of season 2. And of course, overall, this is episode 563. I've canned the idea of seasons and episodes now. I'm just going to number them as we go. It's approximately right. So, yeah, I hope you enjoy. Let's get into it. Here is my interview, part 2, with Doug Hackleman. Let's see how we go.
I have trouble respecting the intellectual honesty of the guy.
Yeah.
He has some nice qualities, but boy.
Has he defended Des, do you think, or has he
He's
quietly? There'll be a little bit of an overlap, by the way,
quizzling,
first part.
It's interesting. He knows better.
That's all right. It'll get to the new part soon.
He has a good PhD from a good university.
He's talking at the moment about
studies.
Dr. William G. Johnson. Okay.
It's interesting in his later years, and in the interview we had with him,
You've heard this before. Just
very much focusing and helping an Adventist kind of. They're now an independent group called the One Project, and they're very much trying to focus on Jesus and and bring it all back to But I sometimes think that you are allowed to focus on Jesus and all this stuff as well. You're allowed to turn over stones, especially if your motivation is to just be honest and authentic and go, well, this happened and we just got to deal with it, and here we are, and providentially, whatever. There's some good things.
One thing it'd be nice to mention, since you've given me this format for a few minutes, is I should mention along these lines that in the third, I think, issue of Adventist Currents, you'll find a story called The Greening of Graybill, where he loses his job at the White Estate because they became aware of the dissertation he'd written about Ellen White, called The Power of Prophecy at Johns Hopkins for his fulfillment of his requirements, and tried to hide the fact that he completed it from his bosses. Arthur White.
I think Ron Numbers mentioned that in my interview with him. Was it that he'd sent, were there kind of two publications, and one was more for Adventists and one was more for the university? Not
to begin with, when I became aware that he published a dissertation or was graduating, I thought, oh, I'll publish just a news notice in my journal that something positive has happened, that there's a new, and I heard it was about Ellen White. So I called him up, never having had any contact with him in my life, and said, I'd like to have the title of your dissertation and maybe just a sentence or two from you from what it's about, so we can publish a positive news item in Adventist Currents. And his reaction was, I don't think I want anything about me or my dissertation to appear in your magazine ever. Just, nasty. And so after we talked a while, and he accused me of some things that the Spectrum crowd thought I had done in getting their mailing list. Actually, I traded it with a couple of their board members for a list of all the medical doctors in the denomination and all the dentists and all the lawyers. It was a straight across trade. I didn't realize that they hadn't cleared it with their board. But anyway, that was one of several things. So I hung up and called the registrar at Johns Hopkins and got the dissertation title, then called the department and got the dissertation number, and then called Michigan University and ordered 2 copies of it. That's where they all go. There's a place called University Microfilms. And in short order, I had 2 copies and started preparing a review of it. He heard about it. But I loaned 1 copy to one of my board members, a lady who worked at the library here at Loma Linda and was a friend of Walter Ray's. And I think she sent it to him so he could copy it or whatever. All I know is I didn't know it, but it started getting around. And Graybill calls me up after I had that one conversation and just ready to sue me or kill me or something. He was just furious. I said, I don't have anything to do with that. I ordered it from University Microfilms and I am going to review it. Well, you can't. It's copyrighted and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, he wouldn't tell me. And what I didn't know was that he had this problem, that he had used all kinds of things in it that were not manuscript released by the White Estate. Because I had followed their rules regularly. When I wanted something from the White Estate to quote that wasn't published before, I would go through that process and I was always turned down, but I never broke their rules.
Right.
He had access to everything in the vault for years.
And he'd used it in his thesis.
Yes. So I didn't know he had that vulnerability. He knew it and he was scared to death.
Oh.
But he wouldn't tell me, hey, Doug, this is what I've done. I really need you to, if you're a decent guy at all, to help me. Yeah, I would have worked with him. Because I know he was sharing things here and there with other scholars around the denomination that he had access to.
Right.
He could have done me a few favors and things would have been fine. But anyway, he didn't tell me. He just threatened me with lawsuits and blah, blah, blah. So I went ahead and reviewed it. And but him knowing that the review was coming out and knowing that the dissertation had gotten loose, he revised it and gave it to his bosses, which was smart to get ahead of it. But somehow they found out that it wasn't identical.
And these are the 2 versions now that I was talking
about. Yes, exactly. And they found out it wasn't identical. And that was what lost him his job. They would have forgiven his breaking all those rules if he hadn't tried to deceive them. And so the review announced, some months later that Ron Graybill was being released to go to a job at the union office, being the publisher of the union paper, like Bob Parr,
Yeah.
And that the state that the board had voted 11 to 7, or it was a 4-person margin. They'd voted to release him, but they didn't go into any of the whys and wherefores. So I called Bob Olson, who was the head of the White Estate at the time. And I said, Bob, I want to know about something, or I wanted to share something with you. But before I do that, I want to thank you and Bill Johnson and Charles Bradford and somebody from Australia, I think. Anyway, for voting to keep Ron even in spite of all that he did. So what I had done is look at the White Estate Board list, and knowing there were 4 who'd voted for him, and knowing the men I picked these 4 and thanked him for all that. Him and Johnson and Bradford and one other, I think it was Spangler, I don't know. And there was a silence on the line, and he says, "How do you know that? How do you know that already?" I said, "Well, I know it now." One of my favorite moments as an investigative journalist.
Oh, wow. Wow.
I had Bob Olson for a professor at PUC in Pauline epistles, and we didn't get on well. And that's how I ended up naming the company Mars Hill Publications.
Oh, yeah. Far out.
Good times.
Good times.
Anyway, a good note, though.
Yeah.
Ron Graybill and I have recently had some contact that has been positive, and he remembers the past with some sorrow and nicely. And he's got a book out, 2019, called Revising the Revision.
Well, I'm pretty sure that I'm pretty sure that Jill or Lance, Jill, I think, Gillian Ford, I'm pretty sure she has organised for me to interview Ron Graybill in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, good.
And
tell him hi. Tell him hi.
Fritz Guy. So yeah. He may not watch what we've just talked about. I won't throw you under the bus.
He drives. He writes very nicely, actually.
Yeah.
And ironically, he's written a paper on the Salamanca Vision that Calvin Edwards wrote for my magazine.
Right.
Like the 5th or 6th issue. It's an extensive piece showing how Arthur White claimed that Ellen White had seen in advance, and he can prove from the diary what she wrote in her diary under specific dates.
Yeah.
That she saw a meeting in advance in Salamanca.
Yeah.
About the American Sentinel. And it turns out, and Calvin, I wasn't able to write it because I couldn't get access to the diary. They wouldn't let me even look at it back there.
Right.
But Calvin, at seminary, they apparently had copies. And he wrote it up in great detail and basically proved that she had gone in under earlier dates and put in margins and between lines and where a diary would end before the page was done, this stuff that makes it appear that she had precognition.
Whoa.
And that's why Arthur White would never let C. Mervyn Maxwell see it. When he was professor at Andrews, he wrote several times to Arthur wanting access to that because it was such a good example of, and here's a case where we can really show the seminary students, you know. Yeah. And then he writes to him saying, I'm starting to doubt, you know, I mean, I've asked and asked now, why, what's...
Yeah. See, it appears to me that Ron Graybill has been motivated to release some stuff that was really concerning him, but then also aware that he was kind of having to not get crucified at the same time, and so there was other times where he would be a little bit careful.
Have you ever read his dissertation?
No, I haven't.
It's called The Power of Prophecy. You can probably get it.
Now, which version is that? Are they both available?
The one that you would find probably would be the real version. And they're not that much different.
You're right.
From what I understand, it's in the introduction, he's thanking Roy Branson and people like that for their help and took their names out.
Right. I would like to read that. I definitely chatted about that to Ron and John. And I'm definitely, someone might be able to put a link in there.
But you can read the back issues of Adventist Currents and read the story of how it got loose and exactly what happened.
Yeah. See, it seems
the
like
third issue.
It's like my whole journey has led me to discover Adventist currents and to explore them deeply. Now that the scene has been set, I'm ready for them.
I'm always happy when people get to enjoy them because we put so much love into that and so much, it gave up so much actually to do those things.
Yeah, well, when the website's up, I will put a link on it officially in one of the parts of it and let people find out more.
That'd be nice, thank you.
Can you tell us I know we're running out of time, but that's okay. I've actually, I think I mentioned before we went to air that I do 15 to 17 shows a week on 7 or 8 different platforms. And SDAQ&A is my favourite, and I put about 25 hours a week into it, and I love it. And I'm even extending my time. In next week, I'll be uploading the podcasts. I'll be uploading the videos in edited form, and I'll be inviting people to join this group to find the full interviews, of course. And just another quick plug on the wall, I've put my YouTube channel. People will need to subscribe to that if they want access to this material. So I'm encouraging people to join that. So where was I going with that? Yeah, so what I've done is I quickly sent a text to my 2 o'clock interview and told them that we're rescheduling for next week. So I don't have to quickly just race off. I have had a couple of messages from people saying, can we have a quick toilet break? So I might even go and have a quick toilet break myself. Do you mind if we just have a little 5-minute interval?
I don't mind. It's really funny, though, in American politics, it was just yesterday that the Attorney General of the United States was being grilled in front of the Senate, the United States Senate. They were grilling him.
Yeah.
And he asked for a 5-minute break around noon. And the guy chairing the Senate Inquisition, Gerald Nadler, said no. And he'd come an hour late. So the whole thing, Bob Barr had been kept waiting a whole hour for the thing to start. And then they just gave him hell the whole time. I wouldn't let him answer questions. He asked for a 5-minute break. He said, no. He says, well, I said, I waited for you an hour and I can't have 5 minutes to.
Yeah.
Well, we're just about done,
Boy, that's terrible.
So
that's manipulative. So I think I'll have a little break.
Okay. What should I do?
We'll be back in 5 minutes. Are you happy? Is that okay? I don't want to.
Do I just leave it open, or what do I do?
I'll just leave it open, and you can walk away and grab a drink, or sit there and look at the camera and hold up a sign saying "back in 5" or something.
Or flex or something.
Yeah, just. If you were able to see the comments, you'd be able to be having a little conversation with people at the time. So I'll be back straight away. Those that have just requested they'd like a toilet break, this is your chance. We'll continue in 2 minutes.
Sounds good.
Oh dear. So professional. So yeah, we'll just wait till we see us come back. It was around now, I think, actually, that that it dropped out. How's everyone going? Good to see so many people joining me for this impromptu program. Let me know if it is still going live. I'm just not trusting anything today on the platforms. But yeah, I tell you what, this interview is worth going back, part 1 and part 2, which is shorter, and just taking notes. Like, for example, he talks about the Salamanca experience. Now, I'd forgotten all about that, and but I just literally then just looked it up online, and there it is, and you can read that whole story there, which I will later. He talks there about Ron Graybill. Ron will be on the replay program soon. And I asked him about it. We had a very honest conversation, and I really liked Ron Graybill's response. He said, "Oh well, that's life. We make mistakes." I really it was nice to hear that Doug Hackleman and he had repaired the burnt bridges. Doug has written this book, "Who Watches, Who Cares?" available on Amazon. Now, I do remember, and Adrian might be able to remind me, we were donated by Robert Lindbeck a couple of boxes of these, which we were going to give away for free. Adrian, if we have any still in the warehouse, let me know, and we'll make it available, pay for postage and handling only. Now, I know that Australia, that'll work. New Zealand might be a bit expensive. I remember offering this to people ages back, and it was going to be like $50 to send it to the States. So you might want to just get it on Amazon. But if you're in Australia and you'd like a copy, let me know, probably in the chat or on Facebook in the group, or send me a message. And we'll see if we can make that happen. But it's a really good book. The other interesting thing about part one of the interview that you're watching now, part two now, but part one, is a lot of what Doug talks about Ray Cottrell. Ray Cottrell is the information, he is there at every important part of Adventist history from, the 1930s up until he passed in was it maybe 2003? I'm not sure, but he was there at Questions on Doctrine, and he was there for the Ray Cottrell Daniel Review, and he was there for Glacier View, and he seemed to fly under the radar and was often not, Oh, anyway, it looks like we're back, but he didn't get into trouble like Des did, but we've got a book coming out by Doug Hackleman soon. So anyway, back to the show.
I got, like, on my, not on the wall on the monitor, but on my private messages.
I prattled too much.
Don't stop the interview, but please give us a break. And I thought, well, I could use one too.
Did you say you had interviewed Des Ford's son?
Yes. Now, what was interesting about that interview,
Luke.
Luke, yeah. What was happening? We had all these technical problems, and it kept cutting in and out all the time.
Oh.
And so I said to him, well, let's keep going, but we had to stop going live. So we did the full, like a good hour and a half, I'd say, of the interview, and but we couldn't go live. And I like, in all honesty, I felt some of what we were talking about was a little bit uncomfortable. Made me feel uncomfortable in the sense that some of what he was saying, there's a lot of hurt there from his past. I think losing his mum.
How old was he? How old was he when she died?
From my memory, only about one, I think.
Oh,
I think, but yeah, between 1 and 4. Jill will correct me on that.
He can be very candid,
He's very candid, and he's been very hurt, and I'm going to upload an edited version of it. He recorded it as well, and he's honouring my request that until I put it up public.
I just want to add something there about what we're talking about there. Luke and I had a great conversation. As I said, we were plagued with technical problems. We had to stop going live, but we kept the recording going. And I guess what I'm trying to be sensitive saying there is that I feel like some of the hurt and angst that he had gone through, I don't know, he just kind of came across a little bit speculative about some weird stuff. And I just thought, the timing wasn't right. I am going to release it at some point in the not too distant future. But like Doug says, yeah, he's very candid, and candid is good. I love it. He did go ahead and break our agreement and ended up putting it live somewhere on the internet. So it is there. But I will present it in full at some point, but I thought I'd just add a couple of thoughts there. I just felt that, like, people do speculate, of course. A lot of things in life are about speculating. I just felt he was accusatory in some of his speculative thoughts. And hey, you know, I've had people on the show that are accusatory and speculative before, that and maybe, you know, when I watch it back, it's not going to be a problem. But and that's why I am going to play it. I'm not going to kind of keep it hidden. But anyway, back to Pete prattling.
Publicly, in my edited version, that he would just not put his up on his wall yet, and he's honoured that, which was great. But I felt that some of his experiences, I'm just being a bit careful what I say, but it may have coloured some of his feelings towards his dad in a way that are definitely for a time to be aired on our podcast, but just not during this this moment, perhaps. Yeah.
I know nothing about their relationship except that I've wondered about it, of course.
I think there's some parallels to your experience where you kind of were, in some ways, growing up on your own a little bit because of the environment you were in, where a lot of other things were going on around you that were out of your control.
And we never discussed anything at home about any of the things that that came to interest me later, you know. Nothing about religion or theology or politics, or we just didn't talk at home about issues. Not that there was any angst, just didn't come up.
Well, Luke has got some good memories of Glacier View, actually, and
does he?
As a little boy, and he's also in a really good place now too. He's he was very candid, as you say, very honest. I really valued that.
Yeah.
You know, if he wasn't agreeing with something I said, he'd shoot from the hip. And he was also talking a little bit about his current beliefs with Orthodox Judaism, I think.
Yeah.
And how he's found a real home there. He feels really accepted, and so there was some really good things about the interview. And
I guess he could be an Ashkenazi Jew, huh?
yeah, he could. Actually, just while we're talking about the Jewish faith there, what's the story about possibly even the date, October 22, being selected because it was the Day of Atonement for that year, turning out to be actually September 23, 1844, not October 22? Do you know much about that?
I don't. I've heard that, and that's pretty getting into the weeds, you know.
There's a small group of Jews that apparently did think it was October 22, but the main bulk of Jewish tradition was celebrating it that year on the 23rd, I think.
I find it extremely fascinating that 0.6%, 0.06, like less than 1% of the American population is Jewish.
Yeah,
it's considerably less, but the enormously disproportionate influence.
Yeah,
you know, look who gets the prizes in abstruse physics every year, or in higher mathematics, or in anything that has to do with abstract abilities.
And look at the entertainment industry. Hollywood was and maybe still is pretty much run by the Jewish community.
Yeah.
More Nobel Prize winners are Jewish.
They're usually right behind the head guy in all of the big political positions. They're right. They're usually not the front man, but they're usually right in the middle of the decision making, or the attorneys, or the. I don't have a resentment that some people seem to have for that.
No.
But I wonder. It's interesting to me as a former or once and never psychologist, having looked at quite a bit at the measurement of cognitive ability. That is a very dangerous topic, you know.
Yes.
And especially if you start noticing group differences.
Yes.
But the most consequential to me fact of human social, cultural, political life is that all of the human traits, you've probably heard of the Big Five.
Yes.
They come out of Raymond Cattell's 16 personality factors. People reduce them to 5. And I would like to add drive and intelligence to those 5. But all of those traits distribute more or less normally in any population, which means that half the population is less than average on any given measure. And you have to have a certain positive degree of most of these traits to be successful in life. And to be super successful, you have to have a lot of certain ones way out in the tail. So there's a real small percentage of people that are in the 1%. Well, there's a reason. So they have the traits or the gifts or both that enable them, the ones that have the drive and the interest, to become enormously successful.
Yeah.
But then we resent them. Some of us.
Yeah.
And we resent them because we're taught by our politicians that that the rich have money the poor would otherwise have.
Say that again.
The rich have money that the poor would otherwise have. It's an enormous. It's the second great lie after "you should not surely die."
Yes. Yeah.
The rich have our money.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
yeah.
We have jobs because there are rich people that made things happen. Damn it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Anyway, huge issue, but
a huge issue, and I agree with what you're saying. And there's a lot of human nature at play there, isn't there?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then just the tendency for us to project our own sensibilities onto other people too,
Yeah.
That may not be the case.
Yeah. It's interesting. Oppressed people often are great storytellers and have an interesting music tradition. I know with the Irish.
Yeah.
I see that firsthand with my in-laws and the brothers and sisters. And the Jewish people. I was watching a fascinating documentary where they'd uncovered, I think it was on Netflix, a potential German, one of the guards that was very cruel at Auschwitz, I think it was, or one of the camps. And I think this all happened in the 70s, maybe, the trial. I'm not 100% sure. I didn't watch all of it yet. Haven't watched all of it yet. But the articulation of the retelling of the stories that the Jewish people were demonstrating in this documentary, just incredible storytellers. Like just your average person, not even the known storytellers of the community, just the average person was able to talk in a way that was dramatic and purposeful. And I've seen that in Irish pubs where just the average person
compelling
they're having a Guinness and you'll start having a conversation and the stories are just compelling. My sister-in-law has released, I think, 20 books now. She recently was in the top 20 of the Amazon all-time best-selling, as in current best-selling books.
Your sister-in-law?
My sister-in-law
is a writer.
Is a writer, and she's.
I'll just quickly add there. She's written 50 books now, approaching 4 million sales. Incredible. Jean Granger. Go and check her out. Jean Granger. Back to the story.
Often number one in her genre.
What is that genre?
So it's kind of Irish history, but from a current twist. I'm not even sure exactly what it's called, but her name's Jean Granger. If anyone wants to go,
is it historical fiction?
It's historical fiction, but it's more emphasizing the fiction, perhaps, with nods to the historical elements of it, and there's romance and drama and everything in there. And we recently did a caravan trip for 2.5 months with my wife and I and our 2 little girls, and her husband and their 2 little girls. And
how fascinating.
Every night we'd be pulling up somewhere and the stories were just incredible.
In Australia or in Ireland?
In Australia. Yeah, they came over here and luckily just got back as all the airline managed to get a flight out before everything shut down.
I'm afraid of those funnel web spiders. I'm not coming down there.
I was on my front lawn of my friend's place 2 kilometres down the road not that long ago, and we're just sitting there on the front lawn just having a chat. And he goes, "Look at that." And just down at our feet, a foot away from my toes, was a massive female funnel web arching her head up, looking at us, or being aware of us there. And all I said was, "Wow, they normally don't get that far from Sydney, this far north, do they?" And we put it in a bottle, in it like a jar, and took it to the local vet.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
We don't see many funnel webs, but I could guarantee I could go out the door right now and in 10 minutes come back and show you some redback spiders.
Are they pretty bad?
They're everywhere, and they love seeing
bad?
bricks and stuff. Oh, they'll make you sick. They won't kill you, but I'd hate my little girls to get bitten. They make you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We're digressing everywhere in this conversation. Yes. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Future generations that stumble across this will say, I had to kind of fast forward during certain bits because Peter would just get off topic.
and you know, when I was in Thailand as a kid, I loved running across snakes out in the yard because I wasn't afraid of them. I mean, I knew I was careful, but I loved to kill them.
Thailand's got some deadly.
I killed a cobra one time. Ran over about a 14 or 15 foot boa constrictor in my bicycle one time. You know, just.
Oh my goodness! Well, I watched a documentary on food in Thailand the other night, and talking about digressing, the guy doing the interviewing of all the cooks and whatnot and the establishments where they were buying this great food, diverted into the dangerous snakes, and apparently something like 10,000 people die a year of
snake bites.
Snake bites.
Well, they have a banded crate that's a black and yellow ringed snake that in the daytime you could pick them up. In fact, I've seen the guys keep the snakes in the snake farm for making venom. Just pick them up bare armed by the handfuls. They're just dead to the world. But at night they're much more poisonous. They're like a coral snake, only they're large. Much worse than a cobra.
And I guess people just get used to where they live. Yeah. Like we're very cautious of funnel webs, but they don't really, you don't think about them.
Well, when I killed the cobra, the two servant boys that were 4 or 5 years older than me that lived next door to the pastor's house, they were really nervous about it. They said that the mate would come and find them. They were worried.
Wow. Boy. Okay, let's take a deep breath, and we've had our break. We'll get back on track. Did you want to say anything more about the Davenport thing? And I thought it was really interesting too. Why didn't Wilson actually do anything against the perpetrators?
Yes, the answer to that, I think I have the answer to that. The Union presidents are the most powerful people in the church hierarchy. They have obviously dictatorial control over the conferences and what they do, and their presidents and their officers. And they also make up the most significant portion of the General Conference nominating committee.
Right.
And so they have a lot to do with who gets to be GC president, more than any other group.
Right.
And so if Neil Wilson wanted to get reelected, he wouldn't want to piss off too many of them.
Well, apparently some of them were moved on to various Adventist health systems and got higher wages. So in some ways they were rewarded. Some
of them did. And if you ever read, or maybe you have, the story about how Falkenberg got, there's several pages there that explain exactly how he got elected, how the whole system works. I never understood it until I had to write the story.
Right.
To explain how he got nominated in the first place. And so the nature of the makeup of the nominating committee and what happens is I think, quite clearly explicated there. And now, apparently for financial reasons, the nominating committee for GC session is a smaller group than it used to be, which makes the union presidents all the more disproportionately powerful.
Yeah. And maybe that's why Ted Wilson has been able to pass the compliance document with apparent ease.
I think that's because he's got such Well, the church he has under him now is so disproportionately from third world cultures that don't sympathize with the concerns that North America has.
So it's quite simple. Just get them on side and the vote's yours.
The Inter-American Division, South American Division, and Africa. And so it's...
Okay, that kind of makes sense. And what I was saying earlier about various leaders getting caught up over here in Ponzi schemes, and that I'm not judging them because we're just humans, we make mistakes.
Yeah.
What concerned me about the Davenport thing was the use of the actual church. Would you say it's use of church money, or indirectly use of the church money by providing the loans? It is actually using the church money, isn't it?
Well, they went against all kind of policy about how to invest.
Yeah.
The conference or the union's money or the hospital's money or the college money. They put it at risk, and that's why there's policies. So
not only did they put it at risk, they actually did lose money, didn't they?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
For the church.
Yes. Yeah.
So when they say they put 20 million towards this Ponzi scheme, that's not counting what they lost after that investment or those loans. Like how much would have the church lost over that, do you think?
Well, I think what's incalculable is in all the losses financial in these stories, whether it's those loans that they didn't get back, or whether it's having a 330-bed hospital go totally bankrupt. That's money that should have continued to make interest on in perpetuity.
Yeah.
Rather than lose, you should have been making money on that money all that time. And when you think about the parable of the landlord in Matthew 25, remember the one guy that just, if all he had done was put his master's money in an index fund, he'd have been okay.
Yeah.
But he buried it in the ground and didn't even get interest,
Yeah, yeah.
And the landlord was ready to throw him into outer darkness. But what happened to these guys? Nothing.
Yeah, yeah. That's a very Jewish story because
we're so forgiving, Yeah, it is.
The Jews have like passed on the art of storytelling and passed on the art of how to really, provide skills with fiduciary care.
Yeah.
In your book, one of the chapters that really blew my mind, and I'd love you just to unpack a little bit because it's kind of a big deal again that no one really talks about, and that's the Harris Pine Mills bankruptcy. Can you unpack a little bit of that? I don't want to put you on the spot because, like you say, it's 13 years since you.
Yeah. Well, a sign of the times in that story is several years ago I drove from Southern California, delightful journey up to Walla Walla, all the way up through Reno, and it's just gorgeous, quiet drive with very little traffic if you go up the east side of the mountains. And I stopped at Pendleton, about 20 miles short of Walla Walla, and having written the story and realized I was where Harris Pine used to be, and discovered that Harris Pine was where Harris Pine Mills headquarters is now a Walmart.
Oh,
I thought, what a sign of the times.
All right.
So you go anyway. That's the most stunning thing to me in the Harris Pine story was that the General Conference Corporation was the only stockholder of Harris Pine that had been given to the church. But Harris Pine itself was a private public. I mean, it was a for-profit corporation in and of itself. So when it got into trouble, and the church and the GC Corporation kept making decisions to loan it money to help it get back on its feet, and they kept throwing more money after bad. They got to the point where they'd given, I think, put 11 million into trying to reorganize it and keep it going. The General Conference Corporation is just three men. It's Neil Wilson, Emerson, whatever his first name was, and whoever the secretary was, maybe Charles Bradford, I don't know. Anyway, those three are the GC Corporation. So they've been putting out tithes and offerings or whatever of 11 million worth into this corporation that they own all the stock in. Meanwhile, at the end, Neil Wilson is the chairman of the board of that for-profit corporation called Harris Pine Mills. It's just absurd that the same man has those two hats, because he's in an absolute quandary. What do I do? Because he has an obligation to the stockholders, and he has an obligation to the church. And so he's...
Wow, that's what you call conflict of interest.
Oh my! And anyway, as you know, they threw it into bankruptcy. They just wanted it out of their hair. They didn't even try to go Chapter 11.
Is that because if you go if you just dismantle it, it's less likely to be able to be used against you legally?
I don't really understand why they did that. He put, I think, Bud Otis in charge of the dissolution, and they didn't want to reorganize, which they could have under Chapter 11. And the trustee, the judge, the former judge, I think, who appointed trustee, said, "This is ridiculous. You have, all this money in timberland, thousands and thousands of acres of good timberland that they failed to mention in their bankruptcy dissolution papers, because they wanted to look unable to continue." Wow. I don't understand why they decided that, but
was there any suggestion that these guys were lining their own pockets, or were they just not very good with money and they were hoping to do investments that improved the finances of the church? Was their motive in the end to make money for the church?
Well, at this point, when it was in trouble, I think that they had decided that they couldn't save it, didn't know how to save it, and just wanted the issue out of their hair. Just wanted it to go away. And they're in charge. They're on the boards of so many things they shouldn't be on. That's part of the problem with all these stories. The boards are made up of ex officios who sit on so many boards because they're who they are. Only because they are a conference president or a treasurer, So they sit on all these different boards, and they may or may not know much of anything about the entity that they're over, and they don't have time to find out. And sometimes they have conflicts. Like if you're a board member for PUC and for La Sierra University, that's stupid. Mm-hmm. But they are. Some of them have been in the past. And plus, a lot of these guys aren't trained or experienced in running much of anything. They're ministers who want to be, I don't know. But the sad thing is, they just letting it go into Chapter 7, you can't sell it off. If you sell it off while it's running, you can sell off pieces and make something off it.
Yeah, so what happened to the acres of
timberland?
Timberland.
I don't know.
Because they were putting themselves in a position where they couldn't receive any remuneration from that too.
Right. They were a turnkey operation, as you know. They grew their own wood, made boards out of it, and then made furniture. Had academy kids doing the work, and
it's a fascinating read. I encourage people to go and look it up on Amazon. Just give it another little plug there. And I think one of the interesting things I want to highlight is that the revealing of this kind of material is not aimed at hitting the church in its midships or causing it damage. I think if you can refine these systems so that and not hide them, but make them public, as we do with the banks in Australia. They have to kind of be accountable for the mistakes they make, and then the banking system improves hopefully afterwards. I think the uncovering of this kind of material can actually really benefit and improve the church as the next generation come up saying, you know what, we want to make sure these things don't happen again. I just want to read a question. I'm not sure if this is one that Jill had said or not. When Neil Wilson told people later that in retrospect with time he might have done things differently at Glacier View, because I know that Jill has stated that Glacier View was kind of pre-decided, and that Neil Wilson took advantage of the recent compiling of the 27 statements of belief at Dallas and GC in April 1980 to use as a creed to fire Des. He did this by using the 10-point statement at Glacier View. Do you agree with that?
Oh, sure.
Can you unpack that a little bit?
Well, the 10-point statement was devised. I don't know if it was entirely ready to go when they got to Glacier View by the administrators or not, but it was obviously what the small group.
Now, I talked to Norm Young, who was one of the guys who was roped in, and he did an interview with us.
Okay.
And he, I think, and Jill can remember this. Oh, and Luke was 4, by the way, when his mother died. So that what an age to lose your mother. Just terrible. But Norm, I think I'm right in this, and someone can correct me, that he feels, his memory is that it was around the Tuesday of that week that he was approached to pull something together with the rest of, I think, a handful of other scholars to put together the 10-point statement. So I'm wondering if Neil Wilson was thinking, I think we might lose if we go with the consensus document. Let's quickly pull in a backup plan.
I'm a little mixed up because the scholars, William Johnson, was it Fritz Guy? I'm trying to remember who was involved in the creation of the actual drafting of the consensus statement.
Yeah, they were definitely 2 of 4.
Group.
Yeah.
I'm surprised to hear that Norman Young would be one that Neil Wilson would pull in to draft a hard line.
Yeah, well, Norm says that he feels like he was, I don't think he used the word tricked, but he was asked to provide something a little deeper that might be able to be presented. I'm not even sure if he felt it was going to be used the way it was used. That's definitely...
That would be important.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure he was also saying that all of the scholars who were brought on board were under the impression that they were just providing a little bit more depth for the committee to look at and maybe discuss. He definitely wasn't feeling that it was going to be used to defrock Des. That's the impression I got, and those that have watched the interviews and have watched them more closely than me.
The 10-point statement seemed to me just to be a really brisk reiteration of the hardline original position of the church.
Yeah. And there's a sentence that Norm added to the 10-point statement that he wishes he'd never added. I just can't remember it offhand. Someone will write it in the comments.
How old of a man is he?
He would maybe 80, 81. You should make sure you join the group and watch some of these interviews.
Yeah, I need to, maybe when we're done, I get the email as to where to open it up.
It's a fascinating interview. He reveals quite a bit.
Norm wrote to Adventist Currents at least once, a letter to the editors that we published.
Yeah. Great guy, local. I've known him and his family and his wife all my life. But yeah, he feels that he got caught up in that unfairly, and that he did naively say a couple of things, but that he didn't feel it was going to be used. I suggested to him, were you thrown under the bus? And I think he graciously didn't he said he wouldn't use that term.
It seems really naive to me that any of these guys that were Adventist scholars for any number of years, by the time you get to Glacier View, none of them were young enough to be naive enough to have any reason to think that this was going to go well unless they stood up. As a group.
Yeah. What I find is that the Liberals often are not coordinated. They have camaraderie and they have conversations and they agree, and there's a lot of kind of I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but a bit of backslapping and, hey, that was well said, and agreed that was good. But then, was it Heppenstall when kind of put on the spot at Glacier? They then claim a little bit of naivety or a little bit of. I interviewed Harry Allen, who's an Adventist, and blew my mind that Des and Jill didn't realise that he was also kind of the publicist for the hip hop group Public Enemy in the 80s. You know, and incredible group, and I love that music because a band called Run DMC would mix a lot of rock guitar work with the hip hop, and they did a song by Aerosmith called Walk This Way, and it's just a fantastic blend of hip hop and rock guitar. So I knew about Harry Allen and didn't quite click that he was the Harry Allen.
Oh, yeah.
And in the interview, so here's a guy dealing with incredible social politics and putting his name out there and defending the rights of, you know, a lot of the young black men of the time who were disenfranchised and suppressed. And he spoke up boldly in support of them. And he called a lot of these guys timid. And you know, I don't want to judge them, but here they are. You've got the likes of Neil Wilson, you know, the very, very good operator politically. You've got a bunch of quite mean-spirited conservatives, and here you are, interested in philosophy and discussing theology and enjoying that communication with your friends, suddenly put into a situation where you've got to do battle almost. Yeah. And I think they just second-guessed themselves and went, whoa, hang on, I better toe the line, or I don't want to lose my job, and what's going on here? Yeah. And then regretted it. I think all of them, if they could go back, I think they would go, oh, hang on. So they weren't naive, but I think they were suddenly taken from their comfort zone. And Adventists are not really raised to know how to deal with conflict. They're kind of wanting to please everybody and keep the status quo, and let's not criticize the leaders. And that kind of leadership almost tries to encourage that.
Well, I would see this phenomenon you're talking about with our religion scholars, because at La Sierra and Loma Linda, which used to be two campuses of the same entity, there were religion faculty on both campuses. And I was, after a couple of years teaching at La Sierra, no longer working for the church at all, and I was doing my own thing and writing and arguing with people and visiting, you know, really trying to learn a lot. And these guys knew that me by nature would be confrontational, not in a hostile way, but just wouldn't let someone wouldn't let them not address the real issue or the heart of the issue. So they would invite me, the religion guys would invite me to occasions where they were meeting with a famous name theologian, maybe, or some big name minister, and knowing I would ask the questions that they didn't want to be the one to ask.
Right.
I mean, they had Bernard Ram for a Friday night meeting, and he's a famous Christian theologian that, anyway, in the discussion afterwards, he was talking about historical foreshortening being the excuse for something he was trying to defend in the Old Testament. And I raised my hand and gave examples of where the story wasn't all that truncated, and even in the Old Testament was rather long, actually. And how does that fit your model? And he just says, you know, I see that you think you have me up a tree. And next question. Yeah. John Warwick Montgomery, a really extreme conservative theologian, apologist for Christianity out in the world, came to our thing, and these guys wanted me to take him down a peg at a dinner, and I ended up, you know, asking him a couple of questions that were pretty hard for him. But I didn't do that to be mischievous. I did it because I really wanted to know, and I really wanted them to address the heart of the issue. And that's just, you know, we don't make ourselves who we are. It's just my nature to want to get to the core of. Yeah. I'm just.
I think you and I are kindred spirits in that regard.
Good.
I don't even approach things with any maliciousness. I've just gone, oh, that's interesting. So what's next? What happened next? Dr. Magnuson was literally my neighbour, and I grew up with his sons Dr. Eric Magnuson was president at Avondale College for a time.
Oh.
And as a little boy, he said to me, you know, always ask why. Why is the important question in life?
That's the question you're not supposed to ask. You know,
Yeah,
parents don't want to hear it. Teachers don't want to hear it.
And here he is, this guy. I don't know what he told me that, and I'm pretty sure he told a lot of people that.
We had a guy. Sorry, we had a guy here, a physician theologian named Sigby Tonstad. Sigby Tonstad, and he wrote a book about the Book of Revelation a few years ago. And the theologians here were having a Friday night panel discussion about, at that time, the coming vote on the Obamacare Affordable Health Care Act. And so we're a healthcare institution, and we know it's going to affect us, whichever way it goes. And so I was asked to give an 8-minute overview of the history of Adventist health, you know, Kellogg, all that stuff. And I did that. And the other panelists were actually given 8 minutes each to present their views. But it was okay with me. But when they opened it up for us to ask each other questions, and this is an example of me at my worst, we've got 800 people in an amphitheater with the president of the university here, and he's a physician in charge of deciding what to do if the Healthcare Act passes. And so the moderator says, well, why don't you guys ask each other a few questions, and then we'll get the audience involved. So nobody says anything. Roy Branson's one of the people, and Sigby Tonstad's there. And there's a pause, and I said, well, I got a question for Sigby. I said, see, and I turned to the audience. I said, Sigby Tonstad has just published a book about the Book of Revelation in which he is an expert. And I said, so he's the perfect person to ask this question. I said, Sigby, why would a people, Seventh-day Adventists, who believe that the shape-shifting beast of Revelation 13 is the United States government, why would they want to give that beast this much more power over their daily lives and finances, as the Affordable Health Care Act appears to be about to? And he tried for 20 or 30 seconds and nothing came out. He'd open his mouth and he'd start. Jim Walters, the moderator, finally rescued. You didn't expect a question like that, did you? You know, and the next day I get a long email from Sigby. Why are you trying to embarrass me? And I thought it was the natural question. But they don't want to be faced with the fact that they really don't believe that stuff. Mm. So the question put him on the spot. He either has to defend the apocalyptic view of the Adventist founding, which we don't, nobody really, or go with his own political instincts, which are to give the government control over everything, because he's a Scandinavian who believes, you know, that they should run our lives for us. So he was in a bind.
Yeah,
that was mischievous.
Wow.
That was mischievous.
Yeah, I've received emails from people who say my office is just down the hall from the president of the SPD and this kind of thing, who I went to college with and is a brilliant guy, by the way.
SPD, I'm sorry, SPD?
Yeah, the South Pacific Division.
Oh, okay.
The Australian Division Office. Great guy, capable, well-loved. But I've said to them, hey, you guys could fix this in 2 minutes if you just said, hey, we accept the liberal perspective and we accept the conservative. You're both welcome in our church, you know. And they were like, oh, why are you trying to invite him onto the program? And, you know, none of us really know much about Glacier View. And so I get what you're saying. You'll ask a question, and then there's kind of what you and I might think as unusual responses of, don't go there, and where you've quite innocently just been asking questions. I'm just going to read another question to you. What do you know about the book Fatal Accounts, The Audacity of an Adventist Auditor's Quest for Transparency by David Dennis, who wrote in the time of Robert Falkenberg? And though Falkenberg, I think it's meaning, lost his job as GC president, Falkenberg remained in good and regular standing and kept working for the church as a contractor. Is that right?
Yes, sort of. He had his own thing going, and And by the way, Falkenberg is an incredibly capable guy, and he knew it, and he he just had too much self-confidence. But as far as David Dennis goes, what a courageous guy. I mean, this fellow had been in 2 or 3 different mission fields, I think in Indonesia for a while, and in Central or South America for a while, where he went and insisted on auditing the books of the financial books of their mission or their field, And these people, some of them were very corrupt. Certainly didn't want it done. Didn't want to answer for it. I think his life was in danger in some of these situations, but he's just does his job, and then he came back and tried to be that way under Falkenberg, and it didn't work. But he probably didn't know some of the pressures that Falkenberg was under. He was being, he was being blackmailed the whole time.
Who was being blackmailed?
Extorted. Falkenberg the whole time he was the GC president. So
by who?
By a guy named, last name of Moore, Moore, a black con artist who had he'd met in the mid-70s down in Central America, and got Falkenberg thinking that he was going to give the mission down there a significant part in a 1,000-acre plus development project 30 miles east of Sacramento in some beautiful country where they were going to build a championship golf course and put condominiums all around it, and everybody's going to make out, especially the Adventist church. And the interesting thing about people that are good salesmen is that they seem to be susceptible, ironically, to other salesmen.
I've noticed, just quick to interrupt, I've noticed, because being a musician, I used to travel around a lot to different countries and places and Adventist communities. Half of my work was with Adventist communities, with music and churches. And if there was ever the latest scheme going through, pyramid marketing scheme, or isogenics or Herbalife, Adventists just kind of fall for it in a way that is more intensely than other communities, because half of my time with Adventist communities, half of my time just in the secular world making a living from music. So I feel like I could compare the two, and say you'd be in one town and Adventists were just falling hand over fist to fall for some pyramid marketing way more than the rest of the community. I wonder why we have this propensity.
Well, this guy James Moore, though, was in prison for a couple of years for his perfidious behavior related to this piece of land that he wangled his way semi-legally into documents that identified it and circumscribed it, and persuaded Falkenberg that he was a significant owner, and on and on. Anyway, so he was in prison for a couple of years, and was in prison when Falkenberg came into office. And Falkenberg had gone to the prosecutor or the judge of the court on his behalf to try to get leniency for him, and so now he gets out. When he gets out of prison, he starts calling Robert at GC, and you owe me. I want some money. Just kept badgering him for large amounts of money and threatening to go public with their relationship. And Falkenberg was appealing to people like who was the guy that owned the cement truck factory up in the northern part of the United States, north central part of the United States. I can't remember his name now, but very wealthy. And he got money from several very wealthy people to help put Ray Moore off for a while, but he kept coming back for more. And I forget how it leaked out, but he finally got to the point where he had to. It got people discovered it who were in positions of power around him, and they decided it couldn't continue this way. But he was in a miserable mess for a long time. But that's a fascinating story. It was a very difficult story to tell, because it's a convoluted mess of players.
Yeah.
That had pieces and had been promised pieces of this property for equity and against loans, and the Catholic Church even had a diocese that was involved in the property, and it was a mess.
I would love, is some of the problem, I would love to see the church, and this is another me saying, this is how you can fix it.
Yeah, easy.
Who cares what I say? But if at all levels of the church, the right person for the job, male or female, not based on gender, not based on ordination, not based on you being an Adventist minister, were allowed to apply for positions from top to bottom, I think that would help the situation a lot more. Because once you're kind of you can only have the highest levels if you're an ordained male minister, you're instantly.
Well, the problem with that is that automatically, by virtue of the fact that these were theology majors in college.
Yeah, no business.
They're not the best of the best, or the best of the brightest as a group.
You mentioned Walmart earlier. Imagine if Walmart made a policy that only ordained Adventist ministers could achieve high-level positions in the Walmart business. It'd go bust in a week. And no criticism to the ordained ministers. If they said only musicians could run it, that would have the same effect.
Yeah. Why would you isolate out of a population of talent?
Yeah. Yes.
A group that have self-selected to not take any hard courses.
Exactly. And so it's not a criticism. It's just, guys, wake up to yourself. Let people into this church. Let it be filled with colourful, beautiful people of all genders, of all skill, of all background skills, to do great work within the church. And I think you'd find, particularly with letting women into the top levels, the accountability would skyrocket. There'd be so much people being held accountable for things in positive ways. The church could just really boom.
The early church back in the end of the 1800s and the beginning of the 1900s, we had a lot of female treasurers.
Yeah,
a lot of them. And then I forget what happened, but they disappeared.
That's interesting. What era did you say?
The late 1800s, early 1900s.
Yeah.
I forget what happened that maybe we became more sexist all of a sudden. I don't know, as a church. Which is odd, because Ellen had so much authority, and she was female, I think.
Yeah. I'm only laughing because sometimes I have to explain how I react, because I know people are going to get it wrong. I'm laughing because I thought, oh no, don't tell us you've got some information you're going to...
No.
And I know you don't. That's what I'm saying. It's just funny.
I think she had 3 sons, didn't she?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's my funny sense of humor.
We're good.
I'm not meaning anything by it. So we'll wrap up soon, but I just want to touch on a couple of things. You were talking about Ray Cottrell and the grandfather. I just misunderstood. How far back does the Cottrell? You were saying right back to the early days of the church. He had.
Well, the family claims Waldensian roots, but the first Cottrells that had anything to do with Adventism were just as the Shut-Door era was being sort of expunged from. People could be converted now, and so it was the late 40s, almost 50, right in there, that they first came in contact with the Cottrell family. And there was an old man, the patriarch at the time, the father of the one who became an editor of the Review for so many years. They were the ones that joined because they recognized kindred spirits in the Sabbath and in the Bible only, and they even liked the eschatology because it was Sabbath oriented, because they came out of the Seventh-day Baptist Christian Connection tradition, but they missed the shut door, which they wouldn't have appreciated at all.
No.
And they wouldn't have appreciated the Adventists right after the disappointment, because they didn't buy into the Sabbath until 46 or 47.
Yeah.
So they caught them just the right time, and here's brethren that we didn't know we had, and they came aboard.
Do you think that preachers from Cottrell to Des and Brinsmead and the many others that have followed, that have this beautiful sense of assurance in salvation, the good news of the gospel, they're really wanting to push that kind of thing, but they're also kind of saying, I don't want to have to make the investigative judgment and the sanctuary and the new phase of Christ's ministry. I don't want to make that have to fit into that, because it's just, I just cannot, their conscience says to them, I cannot make that fit. Are you finding that in your thoughts, and you were saying you don't really follow current Adventist trends, but have you found there are other people that were kind of bringing these messages into the church that were summarily sidelined, ostracized, suppressed? Are there other names that we may never even hear of because the church was so successful at kind of silencing them?
There are several who are mentioned in Ray Cottrell's writings, and Des mentions them in his 1,000-page paper. And at least one of them was Australian. And I can't remember their names now.
Right.
But
Jill will write them in the.
But I have them in what I've written, and brief sketches of who they are and what happened to them. And they are cautionary tales, for how the brethren deal with anybody who tries to minimize the legitimacy of the one doctrine that Adventism has brought to the Christian parade. The only one that's unique, actually.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, I mean, our eschatology is a little unique because it's. I don't think the Seventh-day Baptists make the Sabbath a end time,
like a salvation
issue.
Yeah.
But and then there's 1888. That's a big deal in the life of the church. And there's a whole lot of conservatives who, the wonderful opening up that Ellen White brought in 1888 to our view of salvation, righteousness by faith. And after I got through looking at every document that the church has collected into a binder that pertains to what happened in 1888, leading up to, during, and after, I came to the conclusion that what happened at Minneapolis in 1888, not only, a funny thing happened during that GC session in New York City. The Fox sisters were telling huge audiences at some big hall how they had fooled everybody back then, and demonstrating it and telling them it was all.
Was that with the wrappings?
Yes.
Yeah.
But at 1888, I concluded that here you had Uriah Smith and one of the GC president terribly concerned and wanting Ellen White to clear up what was the law in Galatians. Was it the ceremonial law or was it the moral law? And she wouldn't answer them. And they reminded her that brethren of experience used to always come together and study these things and figure them out before we went public. And now we have at Healdsburg and Pacific Union, these guys are publishing one way and we're publishing the old view that we thought you supported. And you can show that she did back when the older Wagoner was. So anyway, I concluded that, and that's what made Canwright give up finally and leave. He says, if you're going to say this is the moral law was done away, I have no way to continue arguing for the Sabbath. Anyway, but what I have concluded happened in 1888 soteriologically is basically nothing. We became a church that believed in the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus, became a church that believed in the faith of Jesus and the commandments of God. So
say that again.
A church that purported to be about the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus became a church that was about the faith of Jesus and the commandment of God and the commandments of God.
Yeah.
Or instead of a law and gospel, we were now gospel and law.
Yeah.
but the terms of salvation, you still had to keep the Sabbath. I mean,
Yeah.
you still were legalists.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
Not saved by faith.
Yeah, yeah. And yet, I find Adventism so interesting and inspiring. If they could just, here it is, this is what happened. Let's move on. But here it is, it's all out there. Sorry about this. Sorry, Des, we shouldn't have defrocked you. I don't know.
May you rest in peace, huh?
Yeah. What do you think?
Can I just quickly add there? I don't think that anymore. I think that's been my big journey of the last 6 years, and this is 2026 voice coming, interrupting 2020 voice with Doug Hackleman, my voice. Yeah, I don't believe that anymore. If only they said, "Hey, we forgive you, Des," and if only we put the Bible first. And I've realized in the last 6 years, particularly the last year, I know people aren't changing. I know that the traditional Adventists aren't going to change. The leadership isn't going to change. The culture of Adventists love the way it is. That's fine. But the progressive Adventists who offer the false hope that, hey, if only this happened, it would be a great denomination. Well, that is never going to happen. They will never gain a foothold or have any influence. They're still too timid. And B, even if they did, to get to where they want to be, they would have to do away with all of the pillars of Adventism and turn it from a legalistic movement that believes Satan was the scapegoat into something entirely different. And I just no longer agree with what I was saying there. Anyway, here we go.
What can members do about this ongoing situation in the church where administrators just basically seem to do what they like with no accountability?
Yeah, that's. I wish I had an optimistic answer. The fact that the church doesn't have a Freedom of Information Act, like in the United States we have, that legally requires the government agencies to release documents to journalists or to attorneys for cases that need evidence. And the experience I've had as a dissident journalist in the Adventist Church through the 80s, I don't know how you make change. That the church membership has been dumbed down, as we were talking earlier, since the 80s, in a way almost that eliminates the curiosity and the knowledge that's sometimes stimulates it. The constituencies that comprise our membership are increasingly less educated. And then you have the whole movement of Western civilization away from absolutes, of theoretical absolutes about right and wrong, about the ascendancy of reason and the meaning of evidence. Yeah, postmodernism has really hurt the ability to take seriously lines of evidence. A text means what it means to you. It's wonderful it's wonderful actually when you think about it for proof texting. Hey, no, I'll take this here, I'll take that there, and it's what it says to me, and I see similarities between them. And just because one's in the Old Testament and one's in the New, and they're not about the same thing at all, but postmodern, you can text means what you want it to mean.
Yeah.
So all this careful scholarly attempts to get at, and this is what Ray Cottrell wanted in the worst way. He wanted to know what was the original author's intent.
Yeah.
But that's who cares?
Okay.
I mean, my kids went to Adventist Academy here, and none of the religion teachers got into any of this. It was all about Jesus loves me and playing the guitar. And
yeah, I know. And I feel a bit bad because when I was in the 80s, not really knowing this stuff, like I say, till the 90s, when I became aware of it, and it was blowing me away, I kind of ramped up my contribution to the church in this conference with trying to really create a space, and there's other people like Graham Fraunfelder in this area that wanted to create a space, lots of people actually. I shouldn't start mentioning names because then you realise you've left someone out. But there was a real intention from us to focus on Jesus and worship, and there's been, you know, really beautiful connections with young people in this area over the last 30 years because we were focusing on Jesus and the good stuff. But behind the scenes, all of us were still really enjoying the conversations of all this new stuff we were discovering.
Oh yeah.
And then I think, hang on, was I doing the same kind of thing that I'm fearing that the scholars and academics were doing back then by not speaking openly about it? And I'm not apologizing for that, because I'm really proud of being able to have those connections with the many young kids, with the music and the worship and the beautiful experiences we had.
The praise services, yeah.
Yeah, it was just lovely. And so, you know, that was then, and it was good. And I don't want to take anything away from that. And I want to encourage people to still to follow their heart in those areas. But it's just a little time for me now to be able to go, well, let's unpack some of the more controversial things, which I think ultimately will benefit the church, not destroy it.
But Christianity in general, you know, is dying in the Western world. So,
right.
So that seems to me to be a huge problem. Even if I'm not much of one, I'm not sure what's true, because I have epistemological problems with, you know, even whether God exists. But I hope he does if he's something like what I want him to be, and I'll be a universalist if I'm anything, because I think God's responsible for the whole mess. But ultimately, if there is a God, but we need Christianity of a kind that I am not able to have the faith for, to save civilization, because Islam is militant and just as active and ready to take over everything if it can, and there's nobody resisting it. Even the secular left politically in the world, in the European world, is not resisting Islam. They're afraid of it. They won't even publish cartoons. And so that all the magazine and newspaper and media, when Charlie Hebdo's group was murdered, you know, they should have all published the cartoons on the front pages of all of them. They should have got banded together if they were afraid. But nobody published anything. So they gave in to this narrow, authoritarian, baseless faith that goes in so many ways against all the Western values about rights and women and equality and
that's when you reflect on true Christianity as Christ lived it and taught it, you see strength, you see revolution, you see messy, you see clearing of the temple. It's not all just happy hippie hug tree Jesus. And I think what you're kind of saying there is the good actual essence of the teachings of Christ, and the heralding of equality that Paul was talking about, and grace, and these good things in the gospel are actually things that do benefit our society, even if we may be poor believers or have minimal faith in God, or all of that aside. A strong Christian movement with the promoting the tenets of Jesus' teaching and the good news of the gospel will benefit society greatly.
Sure, we're 11 to the whole lump.
Yeah,
but the secular humanists forget where they got their values.
Yeah. Well, this is what I was saying about that country and those people and the sterilizing of women. The very people who will speak strongly in one area just letting that go, you know.
Yeah.
That's why I was surprised but pleased that the BBC actually put out that documentary, because they usually are a little bit too scared themselves to kind of speak on these things.
Well, that reminded me so much of a mystery to me. It's just a mind-boggling mystery when you spell it out. I think since I've been an adult, there's been a movie or two almost every single year out of Hollywood that in some manner or other addresses the Holocaust.
Yeah.
The horror that came to the Jews in Europe. And I don't think I've seen more than 2 or 3 movies in all that time that address the greater by magnitudes horrors that happened because of Stalin's purges and Mao's re-education.
Yeah.
Great leap forward.
Yeah.
How do you get the Western world? Why isn't the hammer and sickle as heinous a symbol as the swastika?
And right on our doorstep here, in one of my other shows, I interviewed 2 people that are leaders of the movement to support those that are being suppressed and oppressed currently in West Papua New Guinea. There's an incredible, the Indonesian government has estimated over 1 million lives being executed, and in the last 40 to 60 years.
What are the sides there religiously? Is the government on one side?
So the government, Indonesian government, it's a long story, so perhaps we won't. But
is it Catholic now, or is it Muslim?
No, so it's the Indonesian government. The Indonesian country is made up of a lot of different religions: Catholic, Hindu, and Islam. Mm-hmm. But the government seems to have almost a separate agenda to a religious one. In this case, they took over the control of the Indonesian islands realm from the Dutch in, I think, the late 50s, early 60s. I could be wrong. In one of the other interviews, it gets deeper. And then they just use the tactics, as a lot of political parties do. Lots of resources in West Papua. West Papua is right next to the Indonesian islands. West Papua was governed by the Dutch. The Dutch were trying to have a transition period that would give the independence to the West Papuans, but as the Indonesian government took over, they saw the gold in them their hills, and and then there's some stuff behind the scenes, because the USA had a big company that had a mining interest there as well. And I guess where I'm going is that, you know, here's this thing right on our doorstep that's very hard to get any kind of momentum for people to speak up about it, because people have fear. So they'll blow the trumpets loud about something happening on one side, and then, we won't talk about that. Very hypocritical, I think. Yeah. Hey, I just want to quickly check. My battery went off on my monitor a while back, so I've been flying a bit solo.
What time is it where you are?
It's 2:30 in the afternoon. You're about 5 minutes away from being the longest interview. Bob Brinsmead has that crown at the moment.
I had so much fun with him back in the mid '80s in an interview we spent.
Really? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. The funniest thing was, you know, I had been writing. I wrote a piece that kind of, you know, called into question this forensic theology of atonement, and he'd been here on a tour preaching forensic justification with all his might, you know, on a tour. And
what year was that again?
I'm sorry?
What year was that again?
It would have been in around 80, 81, 79, that he was on a tour here preaching justification by faith alone. And I stood up and asked him a couple of questions in one of his meetings that were problematic for him. And he just blasted me attributed to me things that were totally unrelated to what I'd said. And then after the meeting, he comes over, shakes hands, and he's all beaming. And, so it's just pure trying to not lose in front of his audience.
Yeah.
And then so in the meantime, I write this piece that's the seminary professors were using as an example of someone who's on the other side of that issue, and he got hold of it somehow. His main guy in the United States was a dentist from Atlanta, I think, and Jack Zwiemer. I think was his name.
Oh yeah, I've heard about this. Yeah, go on.
Anyway, they had a nice headquarters, a library, and an office for his publications here down near Fort San Diego. And so I got a call from that guy in Atlanta, and he said, we've been reading your piece about the atonement, and he said, we've decided that maybe Paul wasn't a Lutheran after all. This was his clever way of saying you've kind of pushed us in your direction, and we're kind of, and sure enough, in no time at all, Bob was writing strong stuff against forensic justification and showing the immorality of it. Whatever he did with all his might.
Oh yeah, I often wish if I could go back in time, I'd put and control anything, manipulate. I'd put Bob Brinsmead at Glacier View, not Des.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so when I interviewed him,
the next 10 years would have been a lot different.
when I interviewed him in 84, 85, we got to reviewing all these things, and by that time we were a bit simpatico on at least that topic.
Yeah.
And somehow he got to talking about how when back in the old days when he was just out of college or in college still, the Pope was coming to Australia for the first time, and prophecy was about to be fulfilled, and the whole great controversy, all that Sunday laws, and the Pope is coming, and the absurdity of how he felt about it at that time, and how we both saw it now, got us tickled, and we got to laugh until we cried.
Yeah.
Two strangers that had only known each other for a couple of hours, really.
Yeah.
We're sitting there just unable to talk. And it was great.
The thing I liked about my interview with Bob and his book, basically Prophetess of Health, Ron Numbers, and Re-examining 1844 by Bob were big turning point books for me, and live meetings that I'd attend with Des Ford were influential. But he was talking about, going from the real concerned kind of side of things to his righteousness by faith era to the next phase, and then he said, and where I'm at now, and he started talking about some really fascinating stuff. But we'd hit the 3.5 hour mark.
Christian atheist,
and and so I've told him I've got to get him back because he's going to unpack his next stage with us. And that's going to be fascinating. And
I don't know where do you go from Christian atheism?
Well, this is where we just started talking about, and and hopefully he lives another 10 years and he can have another phase he can share with us as well. But he's a very interesting character, and he's also currently exploring, apparently, after Christ died, the movement was led largely by James, and that became fairly much a Jewish kind of sect that kind of survived for a while but died out about 200 years after Christ had died. And Paul kind of took over more that to the Gentiles and became the Protestantism that we now have. And I thought that wasn't even he's doing a lot of research under that, so we'll chat about that with him as well.
I'm surprised that he doesn't question the existence of a actual historical figure named Jesus of Nazareth.
Well, he did allude to that as well. And this is the interesting thing about him. I think he could well be an agnostic and still enjoy exploring Christendom.
And like I was saying about David Bentley Hart, the value of Christianity to what we have in the Western modern world and everybody else is benefited by, all the comforts and the wonders are they were very much stimulated by the Christian perfusion into Europe. And
for sure. I don't mind living in the contradictions of my own mind. I don't like cognitive dissonance. I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah.
But I can quite easily understand Bob being agnostic, but being super interested in the teachings of Christ and their relevance to society today. Yeah. And then him saying, and maybe Christ didn't exist. I can fully live within that headspace.
I mean, the best thing I've seen on this topic is a 700, almost 800-page book by Richard Carrier about the existence of Jesus, and he boils it down to Jesus was either a historical figure mythologized or a mythological figure historicized.
Wow. Who said that?
Richard Carrier.
Boy, that's
author of this 800-page book on the whole question.
Yeah.
And he does everything he can to come to a conclusion about the evidence for Jesus's historicity.
Well, yeah.
And he comes down to the position, I'm trying to remember which one he concludes is the more likely in his mind, but I understand I mean, when you find out that there was no Nazareth until the 4th century.
Yeah. Well, when you only need to read the first 4 or 5 chapters of Matthew before we get to the Sermon on the Mount, realize that Matthew is setting a scene for a character, and ensuring that character has ticked all the boxes that the readers he knows he has will expect to have been ticked. And so that infers that you're going to have to mythologize somebody to some degree, because you're setting a scene where a human could not possibly have ticked all those boxes.
But why anybody would die for that myth? If they knew what they were doing, I don't understand that.
Are you saying Matthew did die?
and of course, Paul, oh well. Paul's a crazy man. I mean, sometimes he makes a lot of sense. Sometimes you think, what?
I know.
So
I'm writing a book called Rescuing Jesus from the Adjudications of Moses, the Teachings of Paul, and the Visions of Ellen G. White.
Well, good. I hope you're dealing there with the parable we talked about.
Well,
I mean, with the prodigal son story.
Yeah, that's
and with Jesus saying, "Men of old have said, but I say." Yeah. He throws out the whole retributive justice thing.
And I find that
but his father wants his pound of.
I know. I find that gospel way more appealing, and I've got a hunch that we'll get to heaven and God will say, "Come on in, and we can discuss about the other stuff on the other side of that gate."
It reminds me of Crocodile Dundee, God, we be mites, we be mites.
I love it. Hey, before I let you go, I'm just going to randomly, because I love your storytelling, just look at the contents page of your book and just get you to finish with one more story of one of the stories here. Can you tell us just briefly the story of the Shady Grove Hospital compensation conflict?
Well, that was the one where a series of Washington Post stories in 1999, I think it was, discussing difficulties with patient care at the hospital, problems with patient care that were not acceptable, led to investigations about money at the hospital and who was paid how much, and what the head guy was making, and then that led to on our part a wider curiosity about what are Adventist hospital administrators making around the Adventist health system, which led me to also explore how the health system came into existence, on what basis, and whether that was an intelligent thing. And if you read the chapter, you discover pretty much that the premises for doing it in the first place was the GC was being frightened by attorneys telling them that the possibility of ascending liabilities if a hospital were to do a bunch of inappropriate billing of government payments for patients' care, and it turned out to be invalid, they could find themselves just owing so much money that the ascending liability, if the church owned those hospitals, it would then be liable for the money. And so they did what they could to distance themselves from the hospitals. And they did it, in, as you know, into geographical sections of the hospitals. There were different ones and called it one thing or another. And those kept changing. Who was in which one and the names of them kept changing. But it enabled there to come into existence a playground or a sandbox for all kinds of guys with MBAs and management degrees and whole bunch. There's a lot of cash flow going on in the health field, especially back in the 70s and 80s when this started to happen. But they did this transfer of ownership by, these were hospitals that were wholly owned, some of them, many of them, by Adventist groups of people in different places. And so when the church took them over and then put them under these new nonprofit entities called Adventist Health System, this or that, all of a sudden they lost some control for sure, but not entirely, because they kept putting people on the boards of these hospitals that were GC or union people, which also made it questionable whether they really had the distance that they needed to avoid the ascending liability question. But the attorneys and the people arguing for them doing this were claiming savings of scale in purchases and in the stuff you needed to run a hospital, you know, and saving and shared expertise across. Well, this is all nonsense. It never worked out, any of that. It doesn't work that way. And it provides lots of opportunities for guys to hire outside services for the upkeep of the plant, and then they get a piece of the action. And the guy is driving a Corvette that he got because now we're not hiring our own employees to clean the hospital. We hire a group that's giving us a kickback, and this kind of stuff happened all over the place. And this is what led, of course, to the other story about the loss of the hospital in Boston, outside Boston, where they ended up, these MBAs that now had this sandbox to play in and all this cash flow began painlessly, in terms of their own pockets, playing entrepreneur with doc in the boxes or with imaging independent imaging places that people can go to around the countryside, and maybe like with Pawtucket, maybe a nursing home. And well, most of these things didn't work out well, and so they found themselves needing money to fill in the gaps that they'd created, and then they start looking for assets in the hospital that was actually had some cash flow, making money. And pretty soon the hospital is hurting, and that's how they lost the one in outside Boston. But the salaries turned out to be at the very top. When you start looking at the salaries that these guys are making at the big hospitals in the health system, so you had administrators at the health system, and you had administrators at the hospital. So you had expenses they never had before to get these savings of scale. And then you had a lot more mischief and a lot less oversight and a lot less control. But these administrators at the very top were making $300,000 to $600,000 a year in the late 1990s, which is the very, very top of what the industry's practice was at the time. And these were nonprofits. And the church had this old sacrificial wage business. Well, that was long gone, from the hospital system. But anyway, this was all stimulated by the problems at Shady Grove that were reported in the Washington Post. And of course, some of that got into the Review and Herald, and it did outrage a lot of people. But there were letters to the editor, and then subsides, and nothing really changed much. And we're back there right now, where these guys are making amazing amounts of money. And the thing that's really irritating is you see a guy's making $300,000 or $400,000 or $500,000 or $600,000 a year. On top of that, the only expenses he has is his own home mortgage and going out to eat and clothing. His gym, his country club, his car, his vacation, all kinds of things are covered expenses. They have all these privileges that So they have not only massive salaries, they have really limited life expenses that most of us have.
And you think that's happening today as well?
Oh yeah. And you can easily find out by just going online and looking at I forget the name of the document that that nonprofits have to file for their top organizational administrators' salaries and income.
I wonder if that
compensation.
I wonder if that accountability is available in Australia, though. It might just be a USA thing.
I don't know that.
Yeah.
I miss Ruskets, by the way. And you got now. That's something. See, the second book that we would have written would have included the loss of Loma Linda Foods, for instance, here in Worthington Foods. They're ridiculously bad management. Some good products, or enjoyable products at least. But you guys have done a good job with.
Sanitarium is a brilliant company. I've got lots of friends there. It's run by a really competent CEO who I went to college with as well, and they put out great products. I've got some very good friends that are high up in the sanitarium company, and they, invariably treat their employees well, and they also hire good staff at all levels, men and women, whether you're Adventist or not, and they're on the ball, that's for sure.
And do they still have toys in the cereal box?
I'm not sure. Like, I haven't seen any lately. I have Weet-Bix every day, and I haven't seen any toys or cards lately.
They have Ruskets still?
They have Ruskets still. I'm not 100% sure it's...
Can't get those here.
I'm not 100% sure it's distributed by Sanitarium. Someone will tell us in the thing. Okay. I'll send you a couple of crates of... Where's it gone? I'll send you a crate of Up and Go, see if you like it.
As things change, they stay the same, as you know. And so this, the answer to the big question about what can you do about any of this, it doesn't seem that any of this matters.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Maybe it'd be worse if there weren't people trying. I don't know, but
well, I think that's why I'm excited about not trying to bring about change, but by connecting with people like yourself. And there's a growing small community within this community that just like each other and hang out for lunch, and
for fellowship. If
you can have a small group of people having a better understanding of life, getting more control of their own life, making their own decisions, enjoying each other's company, sing, dance around the fire.
In that regard, if you could, if you appreciate Jacob Collier?
Jacob Collier, tell me more.
Jacob Collier, he's a young man in Britain who is just on YouTube in his room putting together. He plays all the instruments.
Yes, I know. Oh yes. Oh, I tell you what, he's goosebump material. That guy.
Quincy Jones brought him public.
Quincy Jones gave him his first kind of big promotion. His stuff is insane.
And one of his songs was done by Snarky Puppy.
Right.
You heard of them?
Yes, I've heard of them.
Look up Jacob Collier and Snarky Puppy and watch the 10-minute song of his that they do. Oh my gosh!
A friend showed me his
musicianship is unreal.
I literally rarely get goosebumps listening to music, and I was just like, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing,
he played. He did
plays all the instruments.
He did one or two of his pieces with a huge orchestra in Germany somewhere.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. He's piano playing, and then he plays bass. Plays bass.
Yeah. So he had an In My Room tour where he would set everything in motion, like, and the Beach Boys song,
it's incredible. Yeah. And you know what? So people have said, what do you hope to achieve from this? Really, what I'm enjoying is that I'm going to, when this is all over, I'm going to have a good small group of friends that we just enjoy conversation and sharing our ideas. Yeah. That's all I care about.
And we can do Zoom, right? COVID or no COVID.
We can open it up to Zoom chats as well.
Joey Alexander is another, just blows my mind. Yeah. Joey Alexander, the Indonesian kid.
Yes.
Unreal.
Incredible.
Self-taught.
I know.
We went to hear him in LA, my wife and I, a few months ago.
Really?
Yeah. He was playing at a jazz club downtown.
Far out.
He's about 5'11" now. He was, when I first saw him, he was just like 4'8", you know, and
a little,
yeah.
like a child prodigy kind of thing.
And the group in Indonesia he played with were doing Christian music, a lot of it, you know.
Yeah.
It looked like so much fun. They seemed to enjoy each other, and yeah.
Mate,
Well, Peter, it's been fun, man. Thanks for inviting me on. And will you email me so I know how to find you guys online?
I'll shoot you an email.
Okay.
And it's been fantastic having a conversation with you today. Thank you very much, Douglas.
And I'll share some stuff back and forth with you now and then.
I'd love it. We've got
There's
to keep
a God bless you.
Yeah. If I don't see you again in this world, I'll see you on Facebook.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Now, just hang in there for a second.
Oh.
There we go. Yeah, so that was the conversation 6 years ago with Doug Hackleman. It's the replay of season 2, episode 42 on the Desford Glacier View season. This was his book we chatted a little bit about. And Mark Anthony writes, thanks. All you care about is a group of friends on YouTube. Haha. No, still 6 years later, same objective there, Mark Anthony. So, yeah, that's nearly a 4-hour interview, 2 parts. You can watch part 1, which I put up earlier today, and that was part 2. And excuse me, there are so many gems in there. You do need to wade through some of our. We got a little bit sidetracked. I did, and but within that interview, there's some real pearls of wisdom coming from Doug Hackleman, and I do really hope I can get him back onto the program. You know, that's 6 years ago. We've all aged a bit, and I'm hoping that he is well and still putting out his material. So thanks for spending your time with me today, and I will be back tomorrow, not many hours from now, actually. I'm not 100% sure what we'll be doing tomorrow. I'm having a pre-show interview with Don Casebolt, who wrote Miller's Daughter. Oh, and the other book, which I absolutely love. It's just gone from my memory banks at the moment. But he and I are going to be chatting for a little while, and I'm going to ask him if he minds. So we're going to be chatting at the usual time that we would have a show for about half an hour or so. And I'm going to ask him if he's happy to actually just go live, just so that you guys can have a little bit of a fly on the wall experience of he and I chatting about what we will talk about when we book in a time. Anyway, thanks for watching. Appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you all again soon. And as I have been doing lately, just a little reminder of Glacier View, because really, even though we didn't talk too much about it, there was some absolute, golden moments that Doug shared. And yeah, here's Bill Johnson, who we talked about in the show, reflecting on Glacier View. Till next time, see you later.
Desmond Ford's teachings were tested against the scripture, and the Glacier View group testing them against the scriptures did not see light in his view. It is out of that context, not against Ellen White. Friday morning, the consensus statement that we developed was brought to the floor. It was read, it was discussed, and it was voted. If not unanimously, very close. And very interestingly, Desmond Ford said, I can agree with everything in this statement. Here's where
Yeah.
things went off the rails, I believe.
Yeah.
You know, so we're getting just an hour or two and the conference is going to end, and I'm feeling incredible relief.
Yeah.
Because it's been a week of high tension, you know, high drama. And then suddenly another statement appears. I had no knowledge of it beforehand. It was a statement that had been prepared by a committee of 6 the day or the night before. And it had 10 points where therefore his ideas disagreed with church teaching. And it was never discussed, it was never voted, it was simply read and taken away.
I have given my all to